Imagine a room of full diplomats, activists, and scientists from 117 countries. Room was having energy of hope and to discuss the enormous problem to stop warming the planet. So that was COP1, which was held in Berlin. It was 1990s, and everyone was ready to take a step towards our environment. So yeah, as promised, as I had talked in yesterday's video, 30 days I will be talking about each COP. Today it stands for talk about COP1. So yeah, let's move further. First, let's just understand what was historical context and the significance behind this. UN Framework Convention on Climate Change (UNFCCC) had entered the force in 1994 after the Rio Earth Summit in 1992. Its purpose was to stabilize greenhouse gas concentration at level that it would prevent dangerous anthropogenic interference with the climate system. It was created a conference of parties to meet regularly to work towards our environment. The COP1 was took place in Berlin from March 28 to March 7 in 1995. It brought over 117 parties and dozens of observers. And it was a real test for the whole world where everyone is talking about environment for the first time. Yeah, this was quite a hopeful event. And obviously it had marked in history, our history. Key outcome from the COP1 was Berlin Mandate. It indicates that the commitments in Article 4.2a and b in Convention. It directs and initial obligations for developed Annex 1 countries was insufficient. The COP had started progress to strengthen the community's commitments to the period beyond 2000 and potentially via contract, protocol, or any legal instrument. It in Berlin mandate in plain language, if we can say, is that it launched negotiations, 2-year analytical and negotiating phase to design a stronger legally binding emission for targeted developed countries, and it introduced new commitments for developing countries to off the table for the early phase to continuation, common but differentiated responsibility principle. So if you can see, think that it's an board meeting where the first it's an board meeting of a company startup and stuff, and it's the first board meeting, and just setting up the first strategy is not enough. In that, setting up a task, how to process a legally forcible plan, everything wasn't working. Everything has to be working because it's the first time when you're working. No one has idea about what exactly happening, but something big is happening for sure. So let's understand why COP1 was important. It was a pathway to Kyoto. The Berlin Mandate kicked off that negotiation. 2 years later, produced the Kyoto Protocol at COP3 in 1997. The major legally binding treaty that set emission targets for industrial countries. In short, without COP1 mandates, Kyoto, as we have known it, probably wouldn't have happened in that timeline. An institutional legacy. COP1 transferred UNFCCC from a statement of principles into an ongoing deployment process with working bodies, agendas, and formal decision making, and annual COP cycle, which we still follow. Lessons which we learned from COP1 was to start with a clear political signals but prepare for the long negotiations. Equity and differentiation are central and contagious. Institutional design matters. Starting obviously matters. And future implications for legal and political approaches. COP1 pushed toward a legal instrument for developed countries. Today's system mixes of legally binding rules, transparency frameworks, with national determined pledges (NDC). The balance between binding obligations and national flexibility remains a central debate. Equity and finance and trust, and lost trust. The original Annex 1 and non-Annex 1 split still influences demands of the climate finance, adaptation and support, and compensation for loss and damage. Parties continue to argue who overpays and much, a debate whose roots are still visible in COP1 insistence of the strong developed country commitments with excluding new developing country obligations from the early negotiating phase. So yeah, COP1 wasn't just an finish line for us, but it was an uh, journey which began for the hope. A hope that we can still save our planet and still we can work for towards it. Yeah, because of the COP there are many improvements which are happening, like Paris Agreement and etc., Kyoto Protocol and etc. stuff, which we will learn more further. But it also leads up to the what we are doing right now, what that really matters. So yeah, to meet you tomorrow for COP2.